part of the Muncie Jewish Oral History Project. This evening I'm speaking with Mr. and Mrs. Robert Burgauer at their home here in Muncie, Indiana, the date April 25th, 1979. Mr. Burgauer, I'd like to begin by asking you if you could tell me just a little bit about your parents, where they were born, what occupation your father had.
My dad was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and my mother came from Menneson, Pennsylvania. As far as what brought him here, I can't give you a direct answer on that. I don't know what brought him here.
Do you know how your father happened to get into the selling of typewriters, office machines?
No, I do not.
Okay. When did he come to Muncie?
In 1907.
And then he came here, and right at that time he set up a business?
Right.
Did he finance the business himself, or what means did he have to establish a business?
I think he originally financed it himself, then I think he later had a little help from my mother when she was left some money through her estate, and she helped finance the operation.
Okay. As you look back on that business during the time that your father was operating it, how would you summarize it? What was the business like? What sorts of changes have there been, or were there in his lifetime? Was it a successful business?
I'd say it was fairly successful. Nothing real big. Mm-hmm. I think it became much larger when my brother and I got involved in the business.
Mm-hmm. What major changes have there been in that business during your lifetime?
Are you referring from that time up to today's period?
Yeah, just take the whole period from the early 20th century.
Oh, there's been a tremendous amount of changes. There's been new types of equipment that come out, and new lines that were taken on. And if you're bringing up to the present day, now we're in a real sophisticated period of electronic equipment. Mm-hmm. And back years ago, if you want to refer to it as far as typewriters are concerned, there never was such thing as electric typewriter. Mm-hmm. Now that's the main thing today, is electric typewriters.
That's the foundation of your business.
The typewriter business was the foundation of his business, but it isn't the foundation of my business.
What's the difference? What's
the difference
foundation of yours?
Well, the difference is that in the typewriter business, as you're probably aware of, that IBM several years ago got real strong in the typewriter business, electrics, and as far as making any monies of any consequence in the typewriter business, he was really forced to spread out into the cash register business to make it really worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. As you look back on your life in the Jewish community in Muncie, how would you describe growing up in this community? Reflect back perhaps on your childhood years, your adolescent years as part of a Jewish community.
No,
is there anything that particularly stands out?
Not particularly as far as standing out. As far as the community is concerned, are you referring to the Gentiles against the Jewish people? Or is that what you're referring to?
Oh, no, more staying right for this time anyway, within the community. What kind of youth activities were there? What kinds of activities did they have? But we were talking then about the Jewish community and your part in it when you were, let us say, a teenager in high school. I assume you went to Muncie High School, which was at that time Muncie Central.
Right.
They changed the name. How much activity was there as far as your peers, other adolescents who were in the Jewish community? Did you have youth groups? Did you have meetings?
No. Okay. If there was any, I was never active in it. Okay. And there was very little.
How about the social life in the Jewish community as far as your parents are concerned? Did your parents participate much in the community?
No, they did not.
Okay.
Now, let me straighten this up a little bit for you.
Sure.
My mother tried to participate in it as much as she could, but my father never was active in the Jewish community. In fact, he didn't even go to temple.
Okay.
Is this what you want to know?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's a good piece of information.
Okay.
What were the occupations of most of the Jewish people in Muncie?
Well, you're going back from my youth days.
Right.
You must remember, back in those years, there was very few Jewish people here.
Okay.
The ones that were here, I would say most of them were in business for themselves back in those years.
Mostly in retail trade, merchants?
Merchants, yes, I would say so.
What about education? Were there very many people of your father's generation and now of your generation who received a lot of education that went beyond high school?
Are you referring to my family, or are you referring
Yeah,
to...
well, just in general, as you look at people you know in the Jewish community, one view of mobility in the Jewish community is that there were a lot of people who really struggled to get an education. And I was wondering if in your father's generation, and then in your generation, if a lot of people got education beyond high school.
Well, I'd say that in my generation, there was a lot of them that did.
Okay.
But
I'd say... Not so true in your father's generation.
No.
So these are people then who mostly learned
Now, if you're referring
business.
to my mother's, you want to hear about my mother's side?
Yeah, sure.
In my mother's side, they did have a real education because she had 2 brothers that were doctors. Mm-hmm. And I think she had one brother, but I'm not positive, that was a dentist.
Mm-hmm. You've already touched on this point, but I'll ask it anyway. And that is, how observant in a religious sense was your family? I think that response...
Not very much.
...fit here.
Very little.
They belonged to the temple.
Put it to you this way. It was a struggle for my mother, for the family, to be a member of the temple because my father never wanted to pay the temple dues. He didn't think it was necessary. Okay.
How about your own Jewish education? Where did you receive your Jewish education? Did you go to
I went to Bethel Temple here in Muncie.
Did they have a temple school at that time?
Yeah.
We're confirmed.
I was confirmed. I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I can't...
So then, I'm not now talking specifically about your life in the Jewish community. How important has the temple been to you?
Not real important to me.
Okay. Have a lot of your friends been people who are part of the Jewish community in Muncie?
Not close friends.
Okay, so you have as many friends who are non-Jews as are Jews?
I'd say more.
More non-Jewish friends?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we talked about this before we put the tape on, but I think it certainly is worth mentioning, and that is, do you think that the social life in the Jewish community in Muncie has changed over the past, say, 10, 15, 20 years?
I personally think it's changed a tremendous amount myself.
Why do you think that's true?
Well, they used to have more things going on, like I mentioned to you prior to this tape.
Right, card games and social
games and gatherings at the temple or in someone's home. They used to have like a New Year's Eve party, and it was all the Jewish people would go to the New Year's Eve party. And I think it's changed. Now, a lot of the people at our age have moved on to other cities, and a lot of them have died off too. And some that were older than us were active in it.
So you don't think the community is as involved as far as social
I don't
life
really think it is, under no circumstances.
Okay. And a lot of that's due to mobility of people out of the community?
I would say so, but I really don't know the answer to that. I don't think I'll ever find the answer.
No, I think you're right.
And I never really dug into it, and I really didn't care, to be honest with you.
Were you active in any Jewish organizations?
No, never have been.
How about non-Jewish organizations?
I haven't been active in any organization.
Okay.
Only Burgauer Business Machine.
Okay.
Very active there.
Very active. Okay.
Overactive.
Okay. When did you meet your wife?
I met her in 1940.
That's a good year.
What month was it?
February.
February, because this is set in your direction.
Right.
February of 1940.
Where was this?
I met her at the Jewish Center in Indianapolis, at the Kirschbaum.
Now we're getting into some activities. So here you are, a young Jewish...
you asked me about in Muncie.
Right.
Most of my activities was in Indianapolis.
Oh, okay. Well, I want you to elaborate on that. Then why did you go to Indianapolis?
Because there was not a nice Jewish girl in Muncie.
So all the good-looking Jewish girls were in Indianapolis?
Yes, there was very few Jewish people. There's one question, it's going on the tapes, all right, that you didn't... What was the population of Muncie back when you going back those years? Very small.
That's true.
And there was a period of time here in Muncie where Muncie had a fairly decent-sized Jewish population. Nothing tremendous, but I'd say offhand, I bet there was 80 or 90 Jewish families here at one time. How many is there here now?
I'd estimate 50 or 60.
Are you kidding? Well, the 50 or 60 must be sheltered someplace, or hibernating.
Like the old
That could be my fault, though.
Yeah. Well, that's the estimate I've been given, 50 or 60 families.
Well,
Well, I want to talk about this Indianapolis thing a
Okay.
little bit.
Okay.
Was this typical? Were there other young Jewish men your age who went to Indianapolis to find attractive Jewish women?
I didn't inquire about that. I was only interested in myself.
The Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger.
Okay.
No, I went to Indianapolis, and we used to go down there, and that's where I met my wife. But there was, I don't think, at my age, back in those years, there was over two or three Jewish girls here in Muncie.
Okay. What is your wife's maiden name?
Cohen,
C-O-H-E-N?
C-O-H-N.
C-O-H-N. And she is from Indianapolis.
I think so.
Okay. And you were married in what year?
We was married in August 17th, 1941.
And then you came to Muncie. You, of course, were here already. The business was here.
No, well, yes, that's true. The business was here.
Were you in the service?
Yes.
What branch?
I was in the Armored Force.
Okay. Were you overseas?
No.
When did you go in?
I went in 1943.
Okay. And when were you discharged?
Do I have to answer that question?
No.
I'll answer it. I was injured on maneuvers, and I was discharged in 1944.
And then you came back to Muncie?
I came back to Muncie.
How many children do you have?
2.
And their names are?
Elaine, who is married, and my son Steve.
What do they do?
Elaine is a housewife, has 3 children, and my son's in business with me.
Okay, so he's here in Muncie.
Yeah.
In Burgauer business.
Burgauer business.
You got to make sure we get that in case we play it on the radio.
And you want me to name all the things that we sell?
I know that because I've been in there. Okay. Well, let me ask the question then that I told you I would ask at some point. I think it's an important one, and that is, again, I'd like you to reflect a little bit on how you see the relationship between non-Jews and Jews in Muncie.
Well, it's the old story. What you don't know don't hurt you. My relationship, as far as I'm personally concerned, has not been bad at all over the years. I know there's been certain restrictions as far as the Jewish people in Muncie is concerned. Name them, Elks Country Club, the Delaware Country Club, naming some others, I wouldn't, nothing particular, but I never was asked to join, so I was never turned down. As far as having any problems with non-Jewish people in Muncie, Indiana, I can't pinpoint anything in particular. If you're referring to any particular thing, the only thing I can remember is that I was told years ago when we was getting ready to build a house that we was going to build a house here in Kenmore. And we were told there's no way you can build a house in Kenmore. They won't sell you the ground. So it so happened that the real estate man who I knew personally for years, I went to him myself personally and told him that I'd like to buy this lot that this house is on now. And we went over to his home. Is this what some of the questions you want to know? Yeah. And we sat down and talked. My wife was with me. And he says, Bob, you can buy anything I got out here that you want. I says, well, Charlie, I was told that it wouldn't be sold because I've heard of some cases where 2 other people in Muncie, Jewish people, had tried to buy out in this area. And I just wanted you to tell me with your own mouth whether you would sell it to me or not. He says, absolutely. So I never will forget this. He got up from his desk in his home, and he went by the window. He says, come over here, Bob. He says, all this ground here, and there's not too many of them. Take your choice, whatever you want. So we bought this ground here. So I can't, in my lifetime, I have never been involved in anything directly. Now, it may be that I don't know anything about it, but to pinpoint anything in particular, I haven't had anything that hurt me in any way with the non-Jewish people.
What year was it that you bought this house?
I bought
the lot.
I bought the lot
53.
53.
Built in 54.
And so obviously nobody raised any question about it.
No. Is that right, honey?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time when other people were having some difficulty.
We heard of 2 cases. Now, the name of them, I don't want to mention it.
Okay.
But anyway, I can't even remember one. Do you remember one of them, Jenny?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to.
That tried to buy ground here.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
It's not
there
important.
are some people who mentioned that when I interviewed them.
Well,
It's not important.
In fact is, I'll tell you something. We were told directly by somebody that we knew very well that they tried to buy some ground here, and they didn't believe we was going to be able to get it bought. And we did get it bought. And it was no struggle at all.
No, none whatsoever.
None at all.
How important would you say that?
And I got to go a little further.
Oh, please do.
May the
Please
man
do.
rest in peace. The man that sold us this ground, I told him about this. And he was, let's put it this way, most of the Jewish people in the community thought that he was against the Jewish people. They really did. And I had no reason to think he was or he wasn't, only what I heard. But the evidence is there. There was nothing against it, or he wouldn't have sold me the ground.
Yeah, right.
And with no strings attached. Nothing. Because I've known this man for years. Don't forget, there's only very few people here now that was born and raised in Muncie.
Yeah, that's very true.
Very few. You can count them on one hand. Just about.
So your ties with this individual went way back.
No more ties than there would be with anybody else
Yeah.
in Muncie, but he sold us the ground to build this house on.
He was most gracious about it.
Mm-hmm. So there are no specific anti-Semitic incidents that you can document.
If you're asking me as myself personally,
right.
I know of no cases, unless my wife knows of any. And that she's lived here longer than she lived in Indianapolis, she should know.
Well, to go back to the point that I started on a few moments ago, how important were Jewish values, shall we say, in your home as far as raising your children?
Very, very, very limited. Extremely limited. In my home, that he's referring to.
Yeah. Well, then what about with your children?
Well, values were more marrying my wife because she came from an Orthodox home. But we didn't raise our children in an Orthodox home.
Right, right. But you do think that as far as the type of home and the upbringing that you gave your children, that Jewish values were important in
Oh,
that
yeah.
home.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How would you...
Well, it's rubbed off on me from being around her parents to see how they lived and how the family got along and how close they were following the Jewish religion.
And so that tended to guide you then in the way you raised your two children.
I would say so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the future of the Jewish community in Muncie?
Well, I don't know how to put it to you because for this reason I have not been that close to the Jewish community. That are active, so I can't tell you. I think the people here, including myself possibly, it's a two-way street any way you go. I think they've sort of pulled away from each other, myself personally. However, not being active and haven't been for a number of years, I shouldn't even say that. This is my feeling, and I may be completely wrong. I don't think they have the closeness. There may be a certain group that do. I can't answer that question.
Okay. No, I think that's quite an able comment because if you're not around those people,
How can I say?
Right, and you know that
I can't make a commitment on something that I'm completely wrong on.
they don't have a lot of evidence on it.
It could be my fault of what I'm saying.
That's true. Well, as you stop then and reflect on the things we've talked about, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I may not have asked you about? Any comments, any perhaps
Well, I'll be very honest with you. I think at this country club, Bill Greenhill's done a lot of this thing that brought on. But myself personally, I don't have the same interest. And maybe my interest is completely, feelings is different than theirs. It's the people that are here now. There's a few exceptions. I like to go out and play golf. I go out with customers. I'm not a college graduate. I don't like to go to book reviews and discuss world history and all that. My years have all been spent at working, not reading and getting all this knowledge that maybe a person should have. So maybe I'm at fault in some of this. I don't know.
Yeah, but you choose what you want to do. That's the beauty of the country.
That's right. And I'm doing exactly what I like to do.
Exactly. Mrs. Burgauer, do you have any comments that you'd like to make?
No, I really don't.
You've been here for a number of years. Are there any comments you'd like to make of a kind of summary nature about how you have seen this community, whether you think that it has much of a future, how you have felt as part of it?
You know, I've enjoyed Muncie. We've had a good life here. No, seriously.
Yeah.
And we raised our children, and we've loved Muncie. Really have. I really have nothing else to go.
Well, the reason we love Muncie, you love the place where you do well at. Now, if two people married and they're happy with their children, and their children are happy, it's the old expression, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your relatives.
Okay.
Well, it's the truth.
It is,
I'm
yeah.
calling it the way I see it.
Yeah.
I don't care if it goes on tape, it's the truth.
It is true. I agree with you. Good point. Well, I want to thank you very much for spending this time with me. This has been Warren Vanderhill talking with Mr. and Mrs. Robert Burgauer at their home, April 25th, 1979.